Hello, everyone. Welcome to another PGS Talks, PGS Talks 7 now. We are reaching the end of our summit. We still have two more sessions, but this PGS Talks is entitled, Why Should Everyone Worry About Climate Change? And it's my big pleasure to welcome Nathalia Esteves from Brazil on the stage. Nathalia, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor for us to have you here. Nathalia is a PhD student in economics and business at Insper in Brazil with a sandwich doctorate at Cornell University in the United States. She's also a postgraduate student in she's now graduated. She's postgraduated in business and administration for Insper in 2016. She's graduating in economics from Insper too in 2013. She is currently an assistant researcher at Insper Sustainability Center, and she's an extension and corporate social responsibility assistant at Insper and professor of ESG management course at Insper. Insper is one of the long-standing prime signatories, and she will be representing the institution today. Thank you so much. It's outstanding to have you using both hats. You are currently a student, but also you are a professor nowadays, which is very meaningful for our debate. And I'm pretty confident we all will take advantage of your knowledge and expertise. So thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your time. And with no further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Paulo, for a very kind introduction. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Let me open my slides. Let me just close this one here. And let's start. So guys, it's a pleasure to be here today talking about climate change. So the main thing we're going to discuss is why should everyone worry about climate change nowadays? But first, I would like to give a brief presentation of myself. I'm Nathalia. I teach sustainability at Insper. I'm also a PhD student there. I'm a member of their sustainability center, and I represent Insper at Principles for Responsible Management and Education, PRIME, which is responsible for organizing this event today. So let's start talking about the current situation we are in as a society. So we can see that since the 1880, the global temperature of the Earth has been rising at a very dangerous rate, right? You can see that it's exponentially rising over the years. And the projections are also not very promising. If we in the low emission scenario, so if we reduce emissions, our temperature is gonna stay like it is today, like here in the blue line. But if we go to the high emission scenario and continue to emit a lot of CO2, what will happen is the red line here. So we are gonna go up to 4 degrees Celsius of global surface temperature change. So this is a very dangerous scenario, and we should worry about that. So what are the causes for that? So the main causes are the emissions of greenhouse gases, especially CO2. So this graph shows the emissions throughout the world since the 1990s until today. And we can see that emissions have been rising, and don't be fooled by this last data point here. It's only because of the pandemics that we reduced emission in 2020. The emissions continue to rise after the pandemics. This graph doesn't show that, but we have the data. So it's something we should worry about. And now we are going to talk about emissions by country. So first, I'm gonna just show you this data by BCG. So the data I'm gonna show in the next few slides is from this BCG report. It's a very good report. I recommend for you guys to read if you are interested in climate change. So you can see here that the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere since the 1800s have been rising exponentially. So it's look here where we are now, and if we don't stop, it's gonna rise at a very high levels. So now let's talk about the emissions per country. As you would expect, the main emitter is China, with 22% of the emissions in the world, followed by the US with 11%, then comes India with 6%. Then we have Russia, and Brazil is the fifth one. I'm speaking from Brazil, so that's why I'm highlighting Brazil in these graphs. Also, this BCG report focusing on Brazil, so that's why I'm highlighting this. So then comes Indonesia, Australia, Japan, Canada, and Congo. And together, those 10 nations correspond of 60% of all CO2 emissions in the world. And now let's take into account the population of these countries to analyze that. So when we take into account the population, the first one is Australia, then comes Central African Republic and Qatar. The US goes to the 22nd position here in this view. Also, Brazil is the 44th with 11.5, and it's above the global average, which is 8.1, guys. So all these 51st countries are above the global average when we talk about emissions per capita. Now let's look at emissions per GDP. The idea here is that when we are producing, we are emitting. So let's control those emissions by the gross national product, right? So in this view, first is Russia, then comes Indonesia, then India, and Brazil is the fourth one. Brazil is 33% higher than China in this view. These very impressive numbers. Then comes Australia, then China, and after the world average with 0.74. And now let's talk about emissions by motive, which is a more interesting discussion because each country is emitting because of a different reason. So China is emitting because of power and manufacturing, while in the US, you also see power as an important one, but transport becomes a very important source of emissions. And in Brazil, almost half of all the emissions are caused by forests, mainly because of deforestation in the Amazon forest, guys. I don't know if you have this number, but 25% of all the Amazon forest have been already destroyed in Brazil. And now let's talk about the impacts of all of this. So we have a lot of emissions, the temperatures are rising, and then what's happening? What is this causing? So the first one is the melting of polar ice caps. I think maybe all of you guys heard about this before, but what are the problems related to the melting of polar ice caps? When they melt, they cause the sea levels to rise, and when the sea levels start to rise, coastal communities will be forced to move away from their homes and look for different places to live. Also, there are destabilization of global food systems caused because of that. And you see in this image a polar bear. Habitat loss for polar wildlife is also an impact of the melting of the ice caps. Also, the ice caps are responsible for keeping the planet cool, so more intense heat waves will happen because of the melting. And also, and the most dangerous one, because then it becomes a cycle, is the fact that when the polar ice caps melt, the permafrost also melts and it releases methane, and then methane is a greenhouse gas which causes global warming, and then all the cycle begins again. So that's very dangerous situation we are having here. Also, guys, we have the situation of the floods. Here you have a picture showing many people in the community trying to escape the flood. And the thing is that floods, they can harm wildlife. Also, they can lead to the proliferation of mosquitoes. And what's the problem with mosquitoes, guys? Mosquitoes, they carry diseases, and diseases will have a direct impact on public health. So it's an environmental problem causing an impact on public health. Also, all this water that you see in the image carries contamination, such as pesticides, chemicals, and sewage, which will be dangerous for human health. And also, they spread diseases such as hepatitis A and cholera. Another one that is being very present in the media nowadays are the fires. I think everybody heard of the fires in Hawaii we had this year, right? With many people being displaced from their homes and many people dying. So it's also a very dangerous situation. So the fires, they contaminate the air with toxic pollutants. Also, they release CO2 and other greenhouse gases. So again, it's a cycle, right? It brings ecosystem damage and soil erosion. Even the water quality gets compromised years after the fire. There is loss of vegetation, as you can see in this image. And also there is a risk for human life because maybe people cannot escape the fire and they will die. And there is also a social impact, which is the loss of homes of those people, because maybe they can escape, but the fire will burn their houses and they will lose their homes. This one is a less obvious one. I don't know if you heard about that, but climate change brings up diseases in children, especially cardiovascular diseases and respiratory diseases. But also the heat waves, they increase the likelihood of kids getting insolation. Also, the floods will give kids diarrhea, and the mosquitoes that the floods bring will increase the likelihood of kids getting malaria, dengue, and Zika. Also, pollution will make the lungs of the kids not develop so well, so they will have a bad immune system. And finally, they will get allergic reactions such as rhinitis and asthma. This image is very symbolic, and it's happening throughout the world. It's a situation of the climate refugees. What are climate refugees? Climate change is making people lose their homes, and they are forced to move away. And so, just to give you the numbers, 21 million displacements annually since 2008, guys. And also, there could be 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2020. So this is also an environmental problem causing a social problem, right? So the climate change is causing people to lose their homes. And finally, we have the situation of climate injustice. I don't know if you guys heard of the term climate injustice, but the idea here is that the most vulnerable population does not have access to good quality natural resources. So there is an injustice in the access. But also, which is showing this image, is that the ones who suffer the most with the effects of climate change are the most vulnerable ones. So there is an injustice in the impacts. And it's time to take action, right, guys? I think, like I showed you guys, many impacts of climate change. So by now you must be compelled to act. So world leaders should develop effective public policy and laws to help us combat climate change. Also, societies should be organized to pressure world leaders and firms to be more sustainable. And also firms, they are a part of the problem, but can also be a part of the solution of climate change. But the most important one, each of us can help change this situation. So that is why everyone should worry about climate change. Thank you very much, guys. This is my email. Please feel free to reach out to ask any questions you might have, or if you want, I can send you the slides or the references. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.
Hi, Nathalia. I want to thank you very much for your participation in our summit. It was a pleasure to have you here. And I think that we don't have time for questions. But if you want to give some final remark for the people that are here, final view of the point, fair point.
Of course, thank you very much, Rodrigo. Guys, so my final words would be, I hope this made you more curious about climate change, and I hope you continue reading about this and take action and influence your communities and your firms and everyone that you are involved with to take action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nathalia. Guys, if you have to take back to the login page and go to the next session. Thank you all. Thank you, Nathalia.
Thank you. Bye-bye.